Okay, so this is the third page of the supplemental application, and it looks like Gumbear did forget to put the unit number here, so don't forget to, as you're sitting down with him, have him write that in. The second part of this document is asking for the marital status of the head of household. He did select divorced, and so that's great. Then we have just a series of questions that have really been asked at least one other time on the application at some other point, but that's kind of the program requirements, is that we do ask the same questions a couple of times just to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. So it's asking, does anyone live with you now who's listed above and you do not expect to continue to reside at the property? The answer is no. Really what we're looking for is yeses. I'm going to read the questions anyway, just so that you can kind of see what this form's asking for. Do you have full custody of your children? He does go ahead and say yes to that, because we know he has Cinebear and Care Bear. Does anyone plan to live with you now or in the next 12 months who's not listed above? An unborn child may be listed here. He says no. So this is a question that you need to remember if you are adding that unborn child to your application. You need to have them come back and hit and select yes if they said no to this question. Sometimes they get confused and they get going fast. Do you anticipate having any service animals? This question was also asked on the Aspen application. He said no to both, so we can move right along. Have you or anyone else named on the application been convicted of property damage? He says no. Moving right along to that. Have you received a lump sum receipt in the past 12 months? If yes, when? He says April 2013 in the amount of $7,800. So that is definitely something that we're going to have to look into a little bit. Do you have a whole life insurance policy that has cash value? He says no. Have you sold, given away, or transferred ownership of assets for less than fair market value within the last 2 years? We just saw that question on the under 5,000 form. He said no both times. Have you or any person 18 years or older been a full-time student in the past 12 months? Or, anticipate becoming a full-time student for five or more months in the next 12 months? He says no here. We know that he is a student, so we do need to make sure that he changes his answer to that question. Most likely, he was going quickly and he just skimmed over it. So don't forget, when you're working on your Gumbear file, to have him go back here and change the answer to the question. As you work with these forms, you guys are going to know these forms so well. Trust me, after working 5, 6, 7 applications, you'll be a pro. You'll know the student question is on this third page of the Supp app, and you'll know that if we are presenting student paperwork, that we'll go directly back here. So don't worry, you'll remember everything. All right, so then the very last requirement on the form is to please explain any answer to yes above. So we really do ask that any yeses, we have 2, and actually we're going to end up having 3, need to be explained here. He did put student grant. He's talking about this lump sum. That's great. We don't count student grants towards income, so we are going to leave that $7,800 alone. What we do need for him to do is just to reiterate his yes here and just simply state, I do have full custody of my children, Sin and Care Bear. Just a sentence there, he can write it in. And then of course he will be explaining the fact that he is a student. All right, so again, looking for yeses, also thinking back and trying to remember if any of these really should be yeses. And again, you guys will know the questions better than anybody else after 4 or 5 of these apps. All right, make sure he signs and dates it, and you are all set with your Supp app. Okay, so we are going to move on to the student eligibility form. All right, so because he is a student, and so are all of his children, this is a full-time student household. What constitutes a full-time student household is just that. If everyone in the household is a full-time student, if you have one student that is part-time, you are not a full-time student household, but you do need to document and prove the fact that one person would be a part-time student. Or if one person answers simply no, that they are not a student, again, we do not have a full-time student household. Whenever you do, you need to include this document. If all the members are full-time students, then the owner or manager must complete the form and obtain verification to document the household's eligibility under the low-income housing tax credit regulations. So you can have full-time student households, but they do have to meet one of 4 exceptions, and that's it. If they don't meet one of the 4, then you cannot. They're disqualified from living at your property. This is the one and only time. Also, regarding students, that we are going to ask a household to leave the property at recertification if they do become a full-time student household and they don't meet an exception. So normally at recertification, we don't worry about, if their income goes over. We have certain rules for that. If we have extra household members that move in, that puts their income over as long as they've lived there for more than 6 months. All those sorts of things. Rarely do we have to ask somebody to leave, but this is the one situation where we would have to actually ask them to move out of their home if at recertification they become a ineligible full-time student household. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so what are the 4 exceptions? Number 1 is that at least one member of the household receives assistance under Title IV of the Social Security Act, for example, payments under AFDC. If you have a question as to whether or not they fall under here, just call compliance. They'll let you know. The second exception is at least one member of the household is currently enrolled in the GTPA program, which is a job training program, and that is funded by a state or local public agency. So they would just need to provide proof that they were participating in the JTPA program. All right, so the third exception is the one that Gun Bear falls under. The head of household is a single parent with children, and neither the parent or the child is a dependent of another individual. So he does have full custody of Cinna and Gum. He is a single parent, and so that is the exception that is going to qualify this household. The fourth is the members of the household are married and file a joint federal tax return. All right, so he falls within one of the 4. He signed it, he dated it. He did forget to print his oh no, he didn't. I'm sorry. He printed it. I was looking at the wrong side of this form. No matter how many times you look at the form, sometimes you have to second guess yourself, and that's good. Always read through, read everything, and just make sure that that it all makes sense. All right, so the unit is eligible if all other tax credit eligibility requirements are met. So we've signed it, we've dated it, and we're good. All right, so that is the student eligibility form. And you will need this, and you will have to select one of those exceptions on your tick, so just keep that in mind. Okay, moving along to the race, ethnicity, data reporting form. So we do ask that our applicants declare their race and ethnicity. Sometimes they don't want to, and they don't have to. They can decline, and that's perfectly fine. This is what the race ethnicity dec form looks in most of the states. I think Florida has a little bit different one. If you have questions about that, you can simply just call the compliance department. They're happy to walk you through the form. All right, so this is where they can decline to furnish the information. If they want to do that, they can just put their little initials right here and sign and date it, and they're done. But we do need one for each household member, regardless of age. So because we cannot have a minor fill out a form, the adult will need to fill out a form for each one of their children. So this is for Gun Bear. It's for himself. Head of household, household member is the same. He is declaring himself to be not Hispanic or Latino and white. In the ethnic categories, you can only select one ethnic category, and in the racials, you can select all that apply. We do not question anybody's racial selections. If they want to put every last one of them, that's perfectly fine. All right. So this is, I just wanted to kind of give you an example of what it looks like when the adult fills out for the child. So it's exactly the same, except he puts him as the head of household, Care Bear as the household member. He has selected non-Hispanic or Latino, and Black or African American as well as white. That's perfectly fine. Care Bear can have a different racial category than him, even though he's the father, no problem. And the same for Santa Bear. All right, so that takes us through most of the forms that are unique to tax credit, and also has given you a real insight to this Gumbear file. So the next exercise that we're going to do is we are going to take you through the interview process in one site, and we're going to take all of this great information that we have seen on all these forms for Gumbear and enter it into one site to begin processing.